Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Holmes. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, we are housekeepers, so we have some housekeeping for you. But this housekeeping it's a good house. We're keeping up a home. So that means we got to take care of it. And what that means is everything that we use to take care of our home is genuinely what we love and value and appreciate. And so to keep up our spiritual home, our body home, and our mind home, we're going to start with our first sponsor, which is Cabin on the Coulee Farm. This is where we go when we want time to read our books, to go on our hikes, and to chop our wood, or just have our conversations amongst ourselves about the end of the world, but at least we're doing it with a really nice view. So you guys can go onto cotc.ca to check out Cabin on the Coulee Farm.
Yes, and they are rated #1 farm stay in Canada, according to trip101.com. And you can book from May to November. It is open season, everybody.
Yeah, and so you can scroll down, and then on the website, you will see that there are 3 options for you, glam sites. The cabin, which holds 6 guests, 3 bedrooms, and 4 beds. It's their largest glam site.
Yeah.
And then you have the Coulee Yurt, which is 5 guests, 3 bedrooms, and 3 beds. Very, very nice interior. It's so nice. And then the Grouse House, which is 4 guests, 1 bedroom, and 2 beds for the smaller experiences.
Yeah.
But you guys will be glad to know that all of these sites now are pet friendly. And that was not always the case when we were doing our previous videos, but now it is. And the reason we know that, and the reason you would know that, is if you checked out Cabin on the Coulee Farm Substack to get all the updates on what's going on with the latest and greatest with this business. And so you guys can get whatever future projects are going forward, and also, funny enough, an interview by the owner of this business with Maddie and I. And you will see that Maddie, we're wearing a particular garment that is...
If you want to get this Alberta jersey, and you guys can find the Alberta jersey on our Buy Me a Coffee, but instead of buying us a coffee, you guys are going to buy us some matcha. And you will see a shop tab on the right. That is where you can get these jerseys to match me and Macy. And if you do, send us a photo. And originally we did these jerseys just for the Alberta patriotism of it.
To infiltrate hockey games.
Yeah. And we were surprised that people from BC wanted to buy these jerseys, and have been, because it turns out it's not about making the money.
It's about sending a message.
And this message is nationwide. And on Nationwide, it dawned on me that our mother is actually a real estate agent. So if people want to capitalize on this Alberta patriotism and the investment that is coming here because of the Alberta movement, my mom can help you out with that transition into our province. If you guys are on the other side and you're not really sure, a bit more uncertain, want more ground somewhere in the US, our mom can also help you with the sale out of Alberta. So I will put her email in the description box for people to capitalize on.
Yeah, you guys know that we are hugely family centric. So when you support our mama homes, you support us as well. And we really, really thank you guys for that. So
yes, and on the last product that we wanted to share with you guys is something that we use on a quotidian basis. This is actually our hair care
and our skincare.
We use South Korean product. It's called Reman. And the reason we use this stuff is because South Korea, they regulate their products heavily, contrary to here in the West, where they allow thousands of products because it's proven efficacious, according to people like the FDA. They have thousands of product that you're not allowed to put in because they know it's not efficacious. So they have much higher standards. And in this particular stuff, the 2 main ingredients are byungpool, which is tiger grass, and they use lava water, which is mineral filled water. It is not dead distilled water.
So healthy products, which we love. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us in our preamble and this housekeeping to keep all our houses well kept. And without further ado, we can get on with the episode.
Alrighty, hello everybody. This is another This is not politics at home with us. No, this is just an interview.
That's right.
And this is an interview with somebody that Macy and I met at an event that we attended. And it is going to be a fantastic conversation for everybody. This is a men and women conversation because it is blending 2 seemingly unrelated things. But they're obviously not, if anybody has been watching our show for a long time. But we're going to take the world of, the tradesmen from riggers and the blue collar guy, and we're going to combine it with things like mental health and identity and values. And that seems kind of wishy-washy, but we have Meghan here, who, after me and Macy had a lovely breakfast with, she brought to our attention, she also working in the oil field, like our dad. She brought to our attention something that our dad has alluded to, having worked with, thousands and thousands of men. And Meghan, her call is recognizing this in the industry and looking at all these tradesmen and blue collar guys and seeing their struggle with generally how to manage life off of the field. And so she recognized this, and this is something that she wants to have a conversation with. So although this will be a fantastic conversation where we get to introduce her and her mind, I know she will also be asking Dad questions based off of his experience on the rigs and what certain tradesmen can learn from him based off of her bringing this to their awareness, and my dad also just having a different kind of right hemisphere thinking that some men in the trades could use, especially nowadays. So
yeah,
that's a bit of an overhaul.
And for just, I guess, the first question, it's going to be, this is an introduction. So if you want to start just introducing the audience a bit into, I guess, your story and your journey, and especially like what got you interested in exploring all of the topics that you are exploring now that led you to having a podcast with us.
Yeah, this is an At Home with Holmes. Who are you?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by just saying thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's a real privilege to talk to you as a family, and you're a very inspirational family. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the compliment.
So I was raised in Alberta, and I grew up in a small town. And one of the first major life transitions that really impacted me was essentially getting kicked out of my parents' house and getting sent to university. So I moved into Calgary and went to the U of C. And at the time, I had the largest high school graduating class, 99 kids. And then I went to university and started cooking and cleaning and living on my own, navigating public transit and university classes of like 600 people. So that was a huge transition, and I think it's one of the first transitions that we see in life. But after that, I ended up getting a degree in economics and going and working in oil and gas. And I started working downtown for a number of drilling contractors. And that was great. I mean, I loved it, and I started learning about oil and gas. But fortunately, everything that I learned in oil and gas at that point in time was a whiteboard drawing. It was all theoretical. And one of my personal values is lived experience. So immediately I was like, you know what? I got to get to the rig. I got to be on boots on the ground. I want to live it, feel it, breathe it, experience it. And so that became my goal. And it took quite a while to do that with a downturn in the economy. I was fortunate enough to have a boyfriend at the time that knew it and supported it a lot, supported oil and gas. And he knew of a position that he had at the field level. And it was sort of like a clerking role to support well site supervisors on a drilling rig. And so we were able, it took quite a bit of time, but we were able eventually to find a position for me. And I went north of Firebag for about 3 months. I worked north of Firebag. You go up and around and all the way back down into a very remote location and lived in a camp. And I was able to start to support the well site supervisors and the coordinators. And it was phenomenal, but I was closer, but I wasn't quite on the drilling rig. And so after that winter project, I ended up being able to work on a SAGD rig and support the well site supervisors directly. So that was pretty incredible. And from there, I kept pushing. I kept asking questions. I kept engaging. And, as we all know, if you just keep saying yes, they just keep giving you more and more and more work. And so that's what I did. I just kept saying yes, and I kept doing more and more and more. And eventually I worked myself into a junior well site supervisor position, and where I started managing smaller rigs. And then I eventually went out and worked nights in Saskatchewan as a well site supervisor. And it was the most incredible experience of my life, one of the most challenging experiences. And a lot of things happened that I could never have anticipated during that period of time. And I'm happy to speak to that more. But what ended up happening is I ended up achieving that goal, fully assuming the role, realizing my mentor, as we were walking across location, said to me, Meg, if this isn't what you truly want in life, is this sufficient for you to meet your goal and then continue on with what it is you truly want in life? And it hit me like lightning, like all through my body, just head to toe. I knew it was true and I did not want to hear it. Like those moments of truth where you're like, oh, why did he say that? So anyways, I ended up going and touring Ireland with some local shaman and 9 other women, and kind of entering into a completely different journey with my other passions that I have in life, which is everything in the unseen realm and life coaching and end of life doula work. And so that's my journey so far.
Those are polar opposites.
Right? Yeah.
I guess then the most obvious question was, or is, those two things, I mean, how do they connect for you? And why? Because obviously, I mean, you're still involved in the oil and well supervising. So what is it that you want to bring, and what is you see that's lacking in the industry of oil and gas from your newfound passion, which is looking at the end of life doula? And
yeah, so I would like to preface it. The majority of field workers are men, although this isn't predominantly men that I'm speaking to. You know, we could label it as like boots on the ground, or it just happens to be predominantly men. And it's an interesting perspective because I've been all places. I've been the girlfriend, the wife, I've been the boots on the ground. So I know both sides of it very clearly. And when we start to look at the demands of oil and gas, we continue to push our workers further and further and further, longer hitches, always doing extra work, working long hours, working in the cold. And it becomes more and more and more stressful to the point of burnout or overwhelm. I know a lot of men that go to work and they have extreme anxiety when they leave home to go for that hitch, because you don't know what you're walking into. You don't know where they're going to be at in the operation or what's going on. Not to mention, like, you have to walk away from your family fully and disengage your children or your wife or whatever that looks like. You're leaving them for 7 to 5 weeks, 7 days to 5 weeks at a time, depending on your rotation, right? So there becomes almost like a disconnect. We go into this bubble that is oil and gas, and you get so engulfed in the work and what's going on, it's almost like you forget about your family on the other side. So I really want to take a look at lifestyle and how do we start to support lifestyle in oil and gas so that we can, make our workers healthier, make them more productive. How do we support their families and everything their families are going through on the flip side? Like, what happens if dad is gone for 5 weeks at a time?
Yeah, well,
that's a long time.
I mean, I have obviously lots of experience with that challenge. One of the things that I found that was helped keep me the most successful for my 17 years in the patch was, I mean, there's actually a great many things, but I'm going to say one of the most important ones is being a consistent man. And the reason why I say that is in my time of being on the rigs, because I jokingly say I was raised by like 10,000 fathers, because, you get your iron sharpens iron, social man sharpen man philosophy. And so it's like you're being discipled by guys, and it also depends on the generations that are on that rig. Every rig has a unique signature of men that are on it and how they take to the newbie that comes on. But one of the things that I found that really it did puzzle me was because I'd get to know fellas like in their personal life too. There would be times where Noelle and I would go and have dinner with them and their wife, and meet their kids, and because we were trying to connect. Because the one thing that I found was you have a rigging family and then you have your family. And so I would always tell the guys, like, look, when I'm with you. Like, you have all of me. My mind is not at home, because this is the 5th most dangerous land-based job in the world. And basically everything can kill you. Not that it will, but it can. And so I have a responsibility not just to myself but to all of you guys, you know, because this is also me not only as a lease hand entry position, but this was also as I made my way all the way up to rig manager. And the most important thing was be that consistent guy. Like I'm the same guy with my family and my wife as I am when I'm on the rig. Because what ends up happening is you're getting this duopoly, and it happened quite a bit. So all my time working the rigs, I would try to encourage guys, you know, know your action. Like, why are you here? Because when you understand what your action is, especially as a man, it's going to allow you to hold your head with a certain amount of dignity, understanding your value as a man in this industry. Because I'll have to admit, I only met like one female roughneck. I met a couple of laydown operators that were women. Plenty of engineers, like petroleum engineers, lots. That and geologists. I met like tons of ladies that were in those positions. So I never really saw any problem with men or women in the field, to be completely honest. But I also came into the field starting in '99. I left in 2017. That was the big transition from the old schoolers to the new schoolers. This is when they came up with their bullshit target zero programs and all that bureaucracy that pretty much drove lots of men out of the industry, because now you're being so earthly minded, you're no heavenly good, or heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. Like, it's hard to get things done when you're busy throwing paper and JSAs at every single problem on a drilling rig, and it's all for insurance purposes. Like, that's all it's for. The whole thing is just yeah, that's it, right? So now you're taking away the other part that men are like, we're used to risk. It's a part of the way we're designed and built, right? So that would be one of the biggest things, is like, if I could ever compliment what it is that you're trying to do, because if you have a passion for the people that are in that line of work, you know, and we hear lots of different suggestions. We had people coming out and saying, well, you know, like, you should unionize, and it's like, the guys didn't even want that. How about the 8-hour towers? You know, and I was like, yeah, but like, you're in a remote location. No guy wants to be out there for an 8-hour shift and have 16 hours off, you know, especially if he's got any insecurities about home life or things like that. Then he's just being a worrywart, right? Like, a guy on the front line of a drilling rig working a 12-hour shift, usually, if you don't mind my say so, you're balls out for your 12 hours, especially if you're on smaller rigs. Because I've worked them all. I've done the slants all the way to the triples. I went from some belt drive stuff all the way to Amphion technology, which I absolutely loved, by the way. That was fantastic tech. That, for me to offer something for a framework for even the conversation, that would be one of the things that I would encourage, because that made a big difference when I was helping guys become to hold their offices better. Because men, we wear coats just like you had listed yourself, right?
Yeah.
With the wife and with the mother and so forth, or and then your sister, or what, like however the family dynamic. But those are all offices. Like, those are just words to describe how a person demonstrates themselves in relation to someone or something, right? So I wanted them to not just see themselves as riggers. It's like, no, you're men. You're choosing rigging, and you need to know why you're choosing it, and then that consistency, that understanding the value of your decision and why you've chosen to be here, is going to help play a role when you want to communicate to your significant other or to your children. And then hopefully you're creating a structure, because Noelle was really complimentary to that part of my being gone, was the home didn't really change that much when it came to the structure of how things were going to be handled. Maybe food wise, you know. Like, I'm the cook now that I'm home. But anyways, so you can take what I'm offering there, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. I think that's a few different things I definitely want to touch on. Is I did see eventually, you know, working with the same people for a very long time, I referred to them as my work family.
Right.
And it's like I went into a bubble when I was at sites, you know, because eventually your friends and not your family, but your friends eventually know they're always gone, right? And so they expect you to be gone, and they anticipate you're gone, and eventually that's just an assumption. And so you start to lose relation with some of the people that you would hope maybe to engage with. But I really did see it as a work family and people that I spent a lot of time with. You're working 12 to 16-hour days. You better like those people, and you better be watching out for them, right? And their safety.
You don't always have to like them.
No, you certainly don't. But and then, yeah, so I think that I agree that this comes down to really supporting people in understanding what is their underlying philosophy of life. You know, what is your philosophy, and what are your values, and how actively, or how much are you living your values every single day, and whether that's at work or at home. how do we discover and unfold what these values are? Because morals and values are different, right? I can tell the truth, but that doesn't mean that that's like my values. It might be something very different. I mentioned one of mine already, which is lived experience. That for me is a value. Well-being, that is another value, right? And so when you start to unfold them and then start looking at how well you're living by them is another conversation. So what would you say, because you said your work life and your home life were very aligned, what were the values that you were living by, do you think, that helped you?
There was an evolution to that. There's nothing that's actually stationary. Like a person's values, especially for a fellow that's going to find himself out on the rig. Like I had one of my first drillers, he looked at me and he's like, "You got a family?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You married?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Kids, new truck?" I'm like, "Oh, I got a new vehicle now." And he's like, "Good, means you're going to be a consistent hand." Right? It's like, so there's an obligation. And I came to learn the value of my family while being a member and participating in it.
Right.
So the biggest thing about that journey for me was, because I'm not going to make assumptions about other fellows, but I've had plenty of conversations, so I know I can offer a wide variety of mindsets for how that came. But the value structure, first and foremost, was to provide. You're in a new marriage, you have your first child, on the way. And then I was working in British Columbia, falling trees and studying to be an arborist type deal, and that was really hard physical work. And then a good friend of the family had contacted me saying, you have a communication style and a work ethic. He said, I really believe would be complementary to the rigs because there's this huge transition going on. So that was somebody else sort of like taking a look at how I've structured myself as a human being. I also was under a different religious sort of mentality at that time. When I first went out to the rigs, I was kind of like the Jew to the Gentiles, because I was what we kind of lovingly say was a heavy Christian. Like I was a heavy C, belonging to the Pentecostal Associations of Canada at that time. And so like I'm out there and you're not swearing, you're not drinking, you're not smoking, like all the other things that you can do. And so you're already a little bit of an odd man out. So there was some razzing, because you're the people like, that's kind of odd, because there would be fellas that would have a spiritual take on the world, but they always kept it to themselves. It was not something that they wanted to really to talk about, which respectfully I can understand why they made that decision. I was a little more of an extrovert, so I wasn't afraid to communicate why I'm making decisions and caring about people. Like I could openly communicate why I cared about my fellow coworkers, and then I could explain why my actions are going to follow through on why I cared about them. And so I would say one of the values then is going to be communication, being able to communicate your intentions. I've been able to do that in most of the relationships that I found myself with. And so I tried to keep that consistency. That would be another value, is try to be consistent, but be open to the changes that are going to present themselves. As I went through the career, the whole 17 years, there was that battle. I even had a few seasons where it was, I got to get off these things, like, because you're away from your family. So you think, oh, I need to get off. But I mean, the money is really good, and the opportunities that can be presented with that money and for your family structure, because more kids kept coming in on the scene, right? All of a sudden I went from 1 and I got 3, so I'd say value, it evolved because the family evolved, and then I evolved with the different positions. I stayed on one rig where that was very, very abusive for a very, very long time, because that was the rig manager style, was the sort of like the old school, we break you down. Like the man lived with an energy of hate that I had not truly encountered that much in my own life. I'd seen some pretty crazy stuff on the streets, because I'd left home at the young age of 14. But the thing is like, this was a whole different animal, because I'm in the world of, organized metal machinery and men. And you're like, okay, when you get someone who's willing to chuck you down a flight of stairs, or, drop a ladder on you, or like abuse you, to keep you in line, so to speak. It's like it's a fear-based mentality on a drilling rig. So then it was the value of, like, I was hanging on to my family as the anchor for the abuse, like willing to take all the abuse to get my family through to a circumstance. So that would also have been a motivating factor. But then that changed as I got into higher positions of authority, where Now, you know, you got the fellas that are giving you that authority based on your position, but I never wanted it based on my position. I knew that that was a part of it, but I wanted it because of the type of man I was, not the position that they were looking at me in. You know, the military says you salute the position, not the man. And I was of more of the mindset of, no, you, as a man, you should demonstrate yourself where you're earning the honor and respect, because men would rather have respect than love, in my experience that I've seen throughout time, is that they would much rather, like, they like to be loved. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but their hierarchy of values is that's how you show love to one another, is by the respect that you can hold for one another. And be endearing about it if you can, you know, like you spend enough time with them, there is a brotherhood. It's a band of brothers. Like there's a reason why the military chose the rigs in the United States as under a re-entry occupation to take fellas that were coming back from like the Afghanistan scenario and try to integrate them back into society by putting them on drilling rigs, because there's a hierarchical structure that's quite militant.
Very much so.
You know, yeah, and there's discipline, it's hard work, there's risk, right? So, and they usually did very well. I got mistaken for being a military guy all the time with those guys when I was working throughout the United States, because they were like, well, you hold the brotherhood, the value, you know, and it's like, so once again, right, there's these little structures that people have, you know. I feel like values, they change. At least I believe that they should, because you're going to be changing, you know, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about the hierarchy on the drilling rig. And that was one of the biggest challenges that I faced in entering in, like, to becoming a junior well site supervisor and a well site supervisor ultimately, is that I didn't follow the normal chain of command to get to the position I got to, right? I wasn't a roughneck moving up the drilling rig. You know, I was in the command center working with the well site supervisors, walking around. You know, started by organizing logistics and working with the loader, and then eventually taking on more and more competencies, right, and learning things. So yeah, it's and so my question for you is, what was the ultimate what was the moment when you decided to shift, or what caused that shift for you to decide to walk away from oil and gas?
A combination of things. 2017, the family was in its own unique structure at that time, especially with the age of where my son and my daughters were getting to, and because the what I now understand is geopolitical manipulation throughout the world. There's no reason at all for there not to be consistency in oil and gas. And that was always one of the biggest challenges for many of the guys on it, especially in Canada, right? Just due to breakup and so forth. But then because Ottawa loves screwing Alberta's energy sector as well as Saskatchewan's, and well, I mean, just period, energy, period. They're Malthusians. They all want us to die as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, so there was these inconsistencies to be able to do the job. And that's why I went international, is that became less of a hindrance. I could actually like work all year. But I was all over the place. Like I worked in all sorts of projects all over the United States and in South America. And so right when the family was hitting this place, bureaucracy was getting worse and worse. And I was watching honorable men busting their asses to pull rigs out of the dirt, so to speak, out of the bush, and get them going again, because they had been mothballed for a while. And if anybody knows what it means to pull a rig out of the weeds, it is a challenge and a half to get that thing up and running. And they want it up and running like yesterday, of course, right? And every single field soup is just, for some reason, their long-term memory just up and vanishes like a fart in the wind, and they forget what it meant to be the guy that was actually, you know, at the entry-level position doing the job. So the bureaucracy was getting more and more, and then the follow through. It's like you're being chased. We call it left hemisphere lock. Like when we talk about how the left hemisphere mode of attention looks at the world and versus the right. There was no symbiotic relationship. There was when you're coming up with these methodologies of bureaucratic red tape that you think is going to save lives, which it does not. You're exhausting the guys that are in the middle, the ones that are right in the middle of trying to shoulder the load between the bureaucratic nightmare that comes out of whatever office, you know, whether it's Calgary Head Center or whether it's down in Texas in Midland or Wake, it doesn't matter. I don't care who it is. Like the field office, they come and they start squeezing the rig managers, and the rig managers then start squeezing on the drillers. And then the drillers feel like they're like babysitters, and they're busy trying to chase their men over paperwork versus keeping your mind on task, you know, and actually having a successful shift with one another, and the camaraderie. Like the relationship of a drill team, I always held in the highest regard. Like to me, that was my first responsibility, and that value structure got really important to me. It got so important, I was willing to lose my job to maintain that side of things. And I have a few very special experiences that had happened where that really paid off, because the bureaucrats came for me, because they always do. Especially if you think for yourself, you can look a man in the eye and be like, you're a fucking liar. And then all of a sudden they get upset, but it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to call it for what it is. But at the time that I came off, it was getting to the point where I found myself going, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to be in the middle, always trying to defend my men, always trying to stave off and argue with an office that all they see is their reality of my life and the life of my men are lines on a screen through Payson, are invoices of the rig's performance. They started with way too much shareholder value, and they forgot the value of the men where the metal meets the meat. And with that, I just had gotten to the point where I had to look at the boys and be like, I got to shut her down, just for my own health's sake, for my heart, for my mind. And I was never afraid. Like, a lot of guys were like, oh, I can't walk away, the money. I was like, no, your value is not the money. Like, that's not your value. Your value is the man. And that how you worked with me and worked for your family, and I know that it was love that you were motivated by, you know, even though your love may have been purchased at moments because of good paychecks. It's like, you take that anywhere. You can take that into any job, and that should be the recipe for your success. So that way you kind of quell the fear of walking away from the rigs when and if the time should call for it. And I feel like if you look at your family and you've had, you know, like it was a big conversation for Noelle and I, you know, to talk about coming off. We knew there was going to be a big transition, and there was hard challenges coming off the rigs for the first couple of years as you reinvent yourself, and the problems that the people have in their lives in the white collar world are not the problems of the blue collar world. So I know that was long-winded, but there's a lot of context to that question.
There is, right? And it's funny, I think of things all along the way, but you know, you mentioned, and one of the things that I wanted to bring light to was that while I was out in the field working, just one winter we had 3 workplace fatalities, right? And so when we look at well-being and we look at how does that impact let's just say the entire drilling rig, or the community, let's just say the company, whatever that looks like, all the colleagues, right? That's really impactful, and the mind shift that occurs and the focus that's there. But let's just say, for example, it could be anything too, right? Like, you're getting a divorce, how's your mind on task? You just lost your wife or a spouse. Let's just keep it chill. Yep. You lose your spouse, and then you're supposed to be on the drilling rig paying attention, and maybe you're thinking about funeral plans, or maybe you're thinking about your kids at home or what that looks like, right? And it's such a task-oriented environment. You know, you're constantly just planning for the next task. Okay, what are we doing next? What are we doing next, right? Like, it's challenging to think that, you know, you put all these lives at risk, you know, and maybe your mind's not there.
Yep, fully, all the time, right? Too, right? That was always the running joke. It has to stay turning to the right. Like, no matter what, this thing stays turning to the right.
24 hours a day, yeah.
And I found there's a lot of diversity to what you just offered, because there are fellas, that's exactly what they needed. They needed the rig when all of a sudden the divorce happened. And then there are fellas where no, they were a catastrophic mess, and I made sure that I got to weasel into their hearts enough to be like, hey, like, get out of here, you know, like, Take the time that you need. Sometimes life wouldn't allow for that, for sure. They'd be like, there's no way, like I can't go, even though there's all that money, your spending habits and the way how you handle and manage your money. There were guys that were just as broke every time. Like they'd come back broke and they needed that hitch, every time. and which that's fine, fair enough. I understand that. If there was anything that I would encourage guys, it would be, like don't spend recklessly. But I mean, the temptation's there, especially the young guys. One of the first things they do is, buy a truck and try to get themselves some sugar on the weekend from the ladies. And it's like, oh, okay. You're setting the stage for your truck payments, but you're not considering you don't have the context of the industry when all of a sudden it goes through a slowdown period, and then, and then you're broke ass, scrounging for work. And then usually it's work off the rig, something like that. But there's definitely, I would find, if I could encourage anybody that's still on the iron, talk to your brothers and sisters on the iron, communicate with each other about all things. Like everybody would sit around at some point, you get your 15 minutes to eat, you're shoveling it into your face. But there are times on certain rigs where you'd have a little bit more time, maybe not the smaller rigs, but some of the bigger rigs where you got some slow drilling, you're going through some capstone. Things are pretty slow and everybody understands that. It's part of the process. Asking how guys are doing, that's important. It was something that I held in high value, asking how they were, how are their families, how are their kids, how are they doing, obviously I would always, let them know, like, I'm asking questions that I know that you can say, well, that's none of your business. And I'm going to respect that answer, but I'm also going to let you know why I'm asking it. I'm asking because where you are in your heart and how you're feeling about life. And as a man, there would be some guys, they'd be so worried that their wife was cheating on them, and I was like, you're not putting yourself into the right place, even for this as a problem. Like one of the reasons why I never concerned me is I told the missus, like it was a statement I used to say, I don't care who warms my bed when I'm gone, as long as the sheets are changed and the beer that he took, he replaced, so to speak. And the reason being is not because I didn't care. The reason being is that I can't take the time to care about that when I'm out there. That's not something that I can if I put myself into that place, not only could I find myself downcast or distracted or finding my morale really low, I could also be losing my temper quickly. I could be getting short on fellows and even myself. And then it is not uncommon to watch a pipe wrench go flying across a drill floor, And so the thing is like, I would always let the guys know, like, your value to this relationship, this woman that you've chosen, it's it's your demonstration. If that is something that she can't manage in a manner that is honoring to you, that sounds like a personal problem. And personally, that's not your problem. Because all your problems are out here for that scenario. And then when you're home, well, then it's managing the relationship with this person. And if you're finding yourself with that type of a concern about, your wife cheating on you, you might be in the wrong business then, or you might actually not be in a great relationship either. Like you're finding your mind getting possessed by something that it's not going to be beneficial to you. It won't be beneficial to her, because in most cases, guys will be short-tempered on how they handle it. So they'll make accusations without having any evidence, or they'll have a sinking suspicion, and that's the best that you got. And it's like, well, how's that going to help you? Like, how's that actually going to help you? The value of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, So that was one of the things that a lot of guys, they liked about me when I was working with them, even though it was kind of intrusive. At some point, they would find themselves being challenged to think about their role as a human being on a drilling rig in the midst of all the other offices and things that they were required, through duty or obligation or whatever, marriage, societal pressures, these are all factors. So, but yeah.
It's funny because I often think back, about my time, and one of the things that we used to say is like, you don't show weakness in jail. And it's sort of true to an extent, right? Like, why would you show weakness? And people will pick on it, men in particular. I had an interesting perspective because I could sometimes act as like a sister, and sometimes, or like a friend or a sister to them, where they might open up in a different way. And then other times I had to be like a manager. So it was a tricky combination of places to stand. But, when you can open up and show a genuine care or a little bit of vulnerability, that's when you start to develop the deeper relationship and the connection, and realizing that we're all humans. We're all, you know, having life experiences. Everyone's coping with something to some degree all the time.
Right.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
opening up a conversation about that, and allowing people to just show that little bit of vulnerability, and maybe to express something that they need. But that's very challenging in that situation. So
Well,
uh,
you bring up something like talking about, you know, earlier you said you kind of got to play both sides, and you've been boots on the ground, and you've been, you know, the sister or the daughter at home. And so one thing that the first part, what Dad was talking about, what you've been talking about, understanding as the man on the rigs, or woman, your value there, that's very important. But even just generally, because even the women back home, whether it's the daughter or like for everybody listening, this podcast thus far, I mean, we're 36 minutes in. Me and Macy grew up hearing this. And that's something that I don't think a lot of rigging families would get to say. It's the fact that my dad communicated his job with mom and then with the kids, and he would talk about his context. And there is sometimes, even in that movie, The Hurt Locker with Jeremy Renner, you know, he's this military man, and then he comes home and he tries to talk about it, and the wife says, I don't want to hear about your job. She's scared of this other man that he is when she's not there. And instead of trying to meet him, treat him like a human being, you know, instead of filling in all the blanks about what's in the box, that dark box you're putting your hand in, you know, left hemisphere projecting. She didn't bridge the gap. And so you're missing half of this person's context, which is their life away from you. And because Dad communicated equally with the men as he tried to do with us, there wasn't that gap. And I think that's also another thing that the people dealing with the men on the rigs, because like this conversation around mental health especially, I mean, we're in a family of 7, and even Meghan, you have a beautiful family. And
thank you.
yeah, we've met your dad at also different events. And the thing with that, and you can validate if this is also something you've experienced, but that because we're not isolated entities and isolated creatures, back home, your family should be able to look at you, like as a wife, as a daughter, as a son, look at the man on the rig as a human being. And so, which means he needs just as much attention as you are hoping he gives you when he's back with you. And so that communication dynamic and trying to put in the effort to understand the other person's world. Do you have anything to say on that, Meghan?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. So a couple of the things that I've noticed, and just observing my colleagues, is that you're right. A lot of the people that I think really make the work and life balance equal out, and this isn't available for every position, unfortunately. But what I did notice is that dads would still FaceTime their kids. And that might be at 7 in the morning before morning call. That might be right after crew change. Like, who knows? But they're still engaging with their kids. I had one colleague that even brought a storybook to work, and he read the storybook to his kids every night in camp, right? And he was an outstanding human. So there's ways to engage it and to speak about it. So you're right, to talk about it, not to like hide it away and to make it such a bubble, a division, like I was expressing before rather. So talking to your kids and helping them understand. I remember one colleague and his boys would say, Dad, I want to see the rig. I want to see the rig. Like, get out of the way, Dad. I need to see the rig. And they knew, because he talked to them about his work all the time. They knew what he was up against, right? That also comes to at home, like you mentioned. So your wife or your mother, you know, when I come home, it's like I needed 3 days to kind of just bring my nervous system down, calm down, cool down, eat some good food, relax, sleep extra because you haven't slept as much, right? Like and if you had to jump right into a family situation with 3 to 5 kids or something, right? Then you're just go, go, go. And when do you have that personal time to sort of decompress? So I know one colleague that came home, and he actually, because so much changed in his life, he was gone for 5 months at a time. He actually asked his wife for handover notes on their kids. I want to know, what's changed with each kid.
Aww.
What's changed in the hockey routine? What's changed in what they're learning, or what's changed in what they're reading, right? So he actually had an update and he knew what he was walking into when he came back to the dad role, right? And the mom had the time to express, well, now we go to ballet at this time or whatever it looks like, right? So
That's interesting.
what was that like? What was that like for you guys when your dad came home?
It's what he said, he's consistent. So, I mean, when he would come home, it was like, you're so young, right? Like me and Maddie were very young. So it was one of those like almost celebrities coming home.
Yeah.
Like that's how it felt. It felt like, oh my God, like dad's coming home.
Yeah.
And then like instantly the favoritism, like you love your mother, but you're like, I love him more because you're like, I haven't seen him in like forever. And you have to you feel like you need to catch up because you know he's going to go again. So like there's a part of you that's like, get in as much as you can because then he's going to leave. So it was interesting. And even some of the stuff that we've done in terms of just like, you know, the nuclear family dynamic and like kids needing their both parents to have be set up for more success growing up. I think that was why it was helpful to have him come back home when I was like 13, because that was when you're getting now into like the teenage adolescent years of like, oh, okay, so now my decision makings in my brain is getting more developed, and now my individualization of myself is coming online, right? And whereas before you're just a kid and you're just like happy to play a video game or something with him when he comes back, but like now you're at the part where the values that you're talking about, you're slowly but surely in your own experiencing your experience. So then like your left hemisphere is in the part where it's like evaluating your own existence now, and you're like, oh shit, like now I need to differentiate what makes me. And then so it was nice to have him come back for that, because then the communication that he would give to maybe like Noelle, he didn't necessarily give like as much when we were younger, because you can only explain so much to like a freaking 7-year-old, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't that it wasn't there, but it's more like the level of understanding and the care for it. As a 7-year-old, it's like, I don't know, I just want to play a game with you. But like when it was a little bit older, and then he came back and he was reiterating some of the things that he has told us and what he's talking about right now, it was a lot easier to understand. And
yeah, and like I can remember, because dad would communicate with mom, and mom and dad, they were a good team. Like they're good. That was the one thing that even in terms of a good wife-husband dynamic, they really learned how to be one another's friends, and they treated each other as individuals so they could be good partners to one another on and off the rigs. And mom would say, okay, dad's coming home tomorrow. He's going to be really tired. Maybe give him a day, so to speak. Like, of course, come in and say hi, because you're not going to stop your kids from, jumping on the areas you shouldn't be jumping on when he's sleeping in bed. But, it was after, like you say, your hellos and all that jazz, you let him do the decompression thing. I remember mom saying to us, he'll need a little bit, he's very tired. It's like, okay, so we don't expect the world from him, just that understanding, even as kids. Okay, this is a man and he goes through ups and downs and he gets tired just like we get tired.
Coming off of nights too, right?
Yeah, coming off of nights.
Oh yeah.
And so even just
Mom, it's your father's nap time, kids.
Yeah, right, literally. But that basic communication, so then it's like, okay, so we considered that before we just go in. And then having him, one thing that you have alluded to, and this is something that I've seen not just from dad, but then even my brother Sebastian, and then him working also in different trades, there's this dynamic of when, like dad said, some men needed the rigs. On the rigs, there's stuff to do, and men are they want things to do, and that's part of their purpose is to serve. And so when they come off the rigs, they don't necessarily know what to do. And I know, as Meghan, you always talk about the transitionary periods in people's lives. As dad came home, largely the job when we were younger was, okay, then be a good father and tend to the kids, make sure you're going to date night with the wife. And I feel like it was a bit more routine. But then as, kids get older, your role has to shift. So then even as Macy said, as we got older, it was less just expecting dad to come home and then play with us or pick us up from school as a surprise. Then it was, okay, dad comes home and like there's that jot note, stuff will happen. Even if it's a month gone, stuff happens, especially as the kids get older. And now you're like, okay, so I got bullied at school, or I got in a fight today. And then how to communicate that with somebody who you don't communicate with regularly. That's something that I had to learn too, is okay, so how do I communicate with my dad? Because it's not the same as telling mom something that went on, especially when it's half the time it's in hindsight, because, you know, you come home from school immediately, you tell mom you're in tears or whatever it is, but then telling dad and then trying to learn the lessons if you haven't already. So those were things that I know Sebastian and I had to learn. And some of it we didn't even get till, you know, dad was off the rigs, and then we got it, because communication is a skill and it doesn't always just happen overnight. We worked at it for a long time to try and understand the best ways to understand each and every one of our idiosyncrasies. And when men come off the rigs, I've heard the problem where, again, they have a hard time communicating with the family or just embodying their man role, because they don't know what that is. They don't know what to do. One thing that I know my brother talked about was he said, it's like I come home and he's like, I don't have a job. What am I going to do for, like dad said earlier, relax for 16 hours? He's like, no, I don't want an 8-hour shift. I don't know if it's to each individual or if there really is something to be said about, okay, giving the husband or the father some work. And dad, maybe both of you guys can talk about this, but something to do off the job. Does the wife give you, maybe it's too much and she's demanding too much of you, but sometimes I find also the woman's like, oh, I don't want to burden them. And then they just leave them alone. And then suddenly the dad's just sitting on the couch watching hockey the whole time he's visiting, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. So he has no identity back home, like compared to on the job.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And just to start off, I was raised with a father who was gone a lot, you know, and so I remember as a child, you know, okay, I don't want to date myself too much, but like I would, you know, roll out the paper and make dad a homecoming banner all the time, right? Like that was a regular.
So cute.
Yeah, but then you're right, you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, dad's coming home, so now I'm in trouble. Like, okay, now I know I'm really in trouble for what I did. And then there's like, you know,
that was a thing. Yep, that was definitely a thing.
You're right. How do I tell dad what I did? And as you know, when we look at children, like how do we ensure that they know that they are fully loved just for being in this world, that their love is not based on achievement or control or people pleasing or like any of those reasons we look at in life coaching, right? Like there's a whole variety of reasons, and the negative mindset that comes in around like our saboteurs or what our judge that comes in, right? So letting children know that they are just loved for being them and for being individual spirits. So with regards to the relationships and marriage, all sorts of challenges there, right? Like what if mom just is like, okay, I've been raising these kids for 2 or 3 weeks, now it's your time, dad, right? And she needs a timeout. You know, your mom, your wife, she needed a timeout. What did that look like? And you're right, what are dad's roles when he comes back, and how do you find this balance, right? Like he needs to reset, she needs to reset. How do we co-parent and find a new balance there? That's probably something that's quite challenging. What did you guys find that worked for you to balance the roles or define the roles for when you were away versus when you were back home?
It's a little like there's actually the structure that we put together is a little unorthodox because it doesn't fully align with a traditional mindset about the role of mom and dad. You can't tell me one person on this planet that asked to be here. So since nobody asked to be here, there is a responsibility. We believed that there is a responsibility that you have as the persons who made the decision to procreate, whether it was, you know, under mutually, you know, like most children in the world would be a surprise. Okay, like let's say that, right? But I mean, there are those that did their family planning, and that's fine. But for the average person, it's not normally an OCD structured scheduling of when to have the children. So once that happened for myself, it was because I had a very tumultuous past. You're going to run an overcorrection. And so I did do that overcorrection. But what I wanted to keep in mind, and Noelle had agreed when I explained the structure of like where I came from in my background and what my family wasn't, was I'm going to take responsibility for serving them, like, period. You're going to take responsibility for serving your family. And that includes obviously the marriage side. And Noelle also having a bit of a traditional background because her mom and dad were together and she saw how they had worked with one another. And so she felt like that was also like agreed. We knew that we would come at it from a couple of different strategies. We definitely kept in mind that there's going to be the guy version of how to view and solve problems, and there's going to be the woman version of how to view and solve problems. But we were always in alignment when it came to whatever consequences, because we didn't look at consequences as a bad word. Consequences was just the ripple of the ship in motion. So whether the ship makes a violent turn or a calm turn, it still creates a wake. There is still the consequences of the lived experience. So however that was going to play out, we were going to stand in alignment together. So I would, the communication of the kids as they were growing up, I was always meeting them where they were, trying to communicate a little bit above the level that we've discerned that they could understand things. And if not, do your damnedest to find the metaphors. Like I would engage them all the time talking, like just trying to probe, because it was just interesting to me, these wonderful little creatures, the destructive force known as child, existing. And I found that just like I enjoyed participating and watching. Like I did a lot of watching, like just to see, like, you know, they'd fall down and I can count on my hands several times where, you know, they get hurt, but they look around the room first before the emotional of how they would like to handle the situation. And so I gave no reaction. I just stayed looking. You know, like that didn't do the panic, or, you know, where sometimes Noelle, like the mother instinct to go and the neuroticism, the child just, you know, stumbled, and then she'd be like, and then the minute that happened, I'd be like, oh no, you did it. And then all the waterworks would come out. So, yeah. But we learned that we wanted to demonstrate a united front because we were hopelessly outnumbered more and more as the kids kept being born. We're like, okay, we're outnumbered. We wanted to have a united front, demonstrate that consistency. But also the consistency is important for the children. Like, you know, I at one point I understood why Jordan Peterson said marriage is for children. And that really made a lot of sense to me, because when I first heard that from him, it was downstream of me already having a bunch of years of marriage under my belt, and I got it. Like that made sense. This structure is to allow your offspring, as Macy had said earlier, a heightened opportunity for success. Now, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, and neither did Noelle. And I think that was also another really good part about our structure, was we were honest about what we didn't know, and I tried to dispel the hero myth very early, and Noelle had no problems with that. We weren't looking to be our children's heroes. We wanted to be honest guides, and we agreed that that's what we wanted to do, because I realized on the efforts that my parents had put into me, or I would argue lack thereof, to be completely honest. I found that child rearing was easy. Now, I'm saying this is obviously the one that wasn't because like 17 years in the rigs, you're not with the kids that often. So Noelle obviously did the heavy lifting. But that being said, my first 7.5 years was in Canada, and there's breakups. So you're around a lot. You're around a lot more during those years as I was a rigger than when I went international. And then that was it. It was 4 and 2s or 5 and 1s or whatever that routine was. But we wanted to be consistent for them so that they had that consistency. They understood what the consequences were going to be for almost any given situation that they faced, and we would let them face it. Like, I would not get in the way of that. If they were going to make decisions to like screw shit up, that's fine. You're welcome to do it. You cannot make a decision that the family can't pay the cost. If the consequences that you're going to generate is going to be too high for the family to pay the cost, then I'm going to intervene, or you can't do it. Or as they got older, it's like, then you're going to have to leave to go do it, because you are now making a decision for yourself, and you're not considering the consequences of how that ripple is going to affect the whole clan. And that isn't in consideration as far as I'm concerned. And these are things that I know we believe that it played out well, but I also left that up to them to judge. Like, that belonged, Noelle and I would look at each other and be like, we have no idea what we're doing, right? And she'd be like, yeah, that's true. We have no idea what we're doing. But we were honest with that, and we communicated that. We communicated that there were many things that we didn't know. We had a willingness to go find out. And I think that also played a role in, like, I have a natural curiosity. I am a high proclivity for right hemispheric thinking. There's not too many scenarios that will present themselves that I'm not willing to go and explore. These guys can pretty much get me to do anything. And that's not just like a father's heart to his daughter. That's also just Mike Holmes. That's just the way I'm wired. There's several scenarios where they could be like, well, we would like you to do this. And if I have nothing to draw on, it's an experience or a scenario that I haven't really gone through. And I could not only go through it just myself for the new experience, but I get to do it with them, like share in the thing. I mean, that's even what this is. Like, at Homes with Holmes, it's us sharing in a thing, because life is happening and we're facing it together. So I don't know if this totally answers everything that you're kind of inquiring about, but these are some of the structures. These are some of the thought processes that we went through. It's kind of funny how this is turning into an interview of me and the family when you're the guest.
Well, it's an interesting lived experience, right? And you've lived that, and you're able to comment to it. So, I think that the main thing is to put time and energy and effort into thinking about it, and to make our actions very cognizant choices, in everything that we do. Whether that's like I mentioned, the first major transition that I faced in life was moving out of my parents' home and going to university from a very small town. So making really deliberate choices, and then seeing what, you never know what's going to happen after that. But as long as you're thinking it through, I think that's where the important part is. Yeah.
No, and that's why I appreciate, because you bringing in this, our family likes psychology, and from a young age, Dad always looked at the psychology of people in the sense of, love a lemming, don't be a lemming. So just pay attention to the other school kids and see if there's patterns. He would just tell us to recognize patterns if we can. And that just grew and grew and grew. And now we have, the hemispheres in our minds, but your attention to the lack thereof in the trades and in the blue collar world is something that I think is very important, obviously, since we talk about the hemispheres all the time. But even recognizing the fact that as a family, and even just as an individual, the Holmes is cool because we're the family of 7, but even though people look at us as the entity, and so many times me and Macy have been accused, oh, you're just an echo chamber, you're just a parrot of your father. We've heard that loads. The thing is that we're only as successful as we are on face because we looked at one another as individuals. Like even Dad saying the dad thing, from a young age, it wasn't just looking at, even not just Dad, but Mom. I remember as a kid, Mom would say, M is for mom, not maid, just so you know. And Mom would say, it's hard to run a household. And she would give me context, and I go, okay, so I need to do this in order to help Mom's life be better and help the whole house move faster. Like if I want time with Mom, or if I want personal time, she can't give it to me unless her chores are done. Oh, so if I help with the chores, things will go faster. So Mom wasn't just Mom, it was Noelle. And I looked at Noelle and her struggles. And so because I looked at her as an individual, looking at her brain and her values in conjunction with mine, it was better to negotiate with her. And that played also for Dad. And it's only easier to do that now because of the hemispheres and looking at paying attention to your thoughts and your values like you're bringing attention to. Because so many times in life we go through, and our values, because each hemisphere, as we now know, each hemisphere has their own values. And all the time the brain is playing out with their values and their intention in the world, but we're not paying attention to it. And so your values are playing out through your actions, and you don't even know what that is. It's just happening to you, and then you feel the consequence, and then you don't know what to do with the aftermath. And for especially men in the trades that have to deal with, you know, all of the individuals in the job, and then come home, and if you don't have work, like you should know yourself enough as a man, like kind of my brother did. He'd go work at the job and he'd be like, I love the relationship I have with the men. Then he'd come home and he looked at the family and he's like, why do I feel kind of useless? Why do I feel like I don't belong as much? He's like, oh, I'm not contributing. I'm not serving my family the way that I serve my men. And then he's like, what can I do? How can I help? And that was something that helped fulfill him and connect him more with the family. Because then he understood, even contributing to the family and its role, he understood the family better, because now he's embodying what everybody in the household embodies. And the thing with the values, sometimes you don't understand what another person values, or even what you value yourself, until you go through with it. And that's one thing that even the woman to her man, or a man to a woman, or you to your kids, when you go into their world, you will understand them better. And that's why when you go into their mind, when you look at the hemispheres, and then you can understand everybody's values a little bit better. Of course, not written down on stone as if you can just read every individual now, but you have a much better idea about what that makes this person tick, so you can negotiate with them. And that connection that you are bringing is something that we don't hear a lot of people talk about, which is why we wanted to have you on, because you're recognizing, okay, so there's this mental game and this philosophy that is playing out, or philosophies, all the time in your work life, in your routines, in your family, and it's doing a lot of things to you without your input.
Yeah, my two bits on that one was just going to be physics, as in it feels like when you're like a guy on the rigs and you have like the machine kind of brain where you're like, oh, I like how things work, right? And it's you can use it on the level of a factory worker or of a rigger. It doesn't necessarily matter to pick your job, but it's like whatever your role is, your speciality, right? You're good at it and you're learning how to get better at it. But there's context of this part is a part of a whole, right? And you might be the guy that figured out how to understand the whole, right? So that way you can understand the guys that are working on the parts. But no matter what, there's still something going on in here on a hemisphere level, regardless of if you're the top dog manager who understands the big picture versus a guy that has to do the smaller tasks. There's still something that's key, which is you both still have two different hemispheres that do know how to understand exactly the same thing, even if you're not doing exactly the same thing. Because part of you that's doing your little like task on the ground level as like a guy that's working with the cogs, right, of the machine, and not necessarily like operating the machine, but you're learning how to build it kind of thing. It's like you have the ability to like look at all of the context surrounding it, all of the physics. So you're like, oh, like this specific tool is not going to work because of X, Y, Z, da, 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 right? This specific oil is not going to do the thing because of da, 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 right? Like I need this and I need it during this time, and during this temperature, it's going to look like this. And like so you can start to, I guess, factor in all of the factors that go into your operation, no matter how small it is, right? Because if you're putting in the care and the good work ethic that you are, then you're doing that. And a lot of the times it's incentivized for money. So it's like we always laugh that it's like we have a friend and we say Jay, but it's more like paid man is better than unpaid man when it comes to certain tasks. And so, yeah, they're incentivized. So even for like our brother, his ability to bring forward a part of him where he's understanding the factors around his role or in the overall operation, he paid a lot of attention to, and he was really good, and he kept that's what allowed him to keep climbing if he wanted to, because he had that goal in mind of just wanting to climb and wanting to do good for the men. That's something you also have to negotiate, is do you even want to climb that, right? Or are you cool with staying where you are and then just earning there? Because that's also something that is perfectly fine as well. But the incentivization to take into consideration all those factors, now it's like, well, your biggest incentivization should also be trying to take in all the factors of your family, right? And trying to understand your role in that operation, right? Because then there's a lot of physics, right? So like there's a lot of, during the temperature of here, if we can't go, like
The physics to the work side,
the physics to the
at
work
home.
side, the physics to the home. I remember like Dad would all the time kind of like say, this is where I think that their heads are at. And he would theorize that. And then he would communicate it probably with Noelle. And then in part, he would communicate it with us to either his version of guiding us, not necessarily like warning us in some sense, because that's what a guide can do.
Informed consent.
Informed consent, right? But that's because he had the conscious wherewithal to want to do that, to want to actually go like, I need to understand the physics of this operation as well. And so then that's something that I think guys that are struggling to figure out their role, it's like, don't box yourself in, because you're very capable of understanding the physics of an operation. You do it every fucking day. Like,
yeah, I encourage guys to bring the curiosity that they had for the things that were one of the reasons why men are drawn to that is that messing with problems in the physics of something like drilling rigs, there's a consistency here. Like, there's way more X factors in the family dynamic because you're negotiating with so many people. In an operation where you have a team of people that are trying to accomplish a goal for work, like an occupation or a career, everyone has the goal. Like, you got to keep that rig running and it's got to stay turning to the right, and you want to do it like, so there's this framework that's not going to change. Like, that part doesn't change. So this is where this appeals to the left hemisphere, because it's kind of like stasis and you're crystallizing something. Whereas a family is never that. Like, family is a river, and it winds and it twists and it gets faster, and there's rapids, and then there's this calm. Like, we've floated lots as a family, and there's different sections of the river from where we first jump in and how that plays out. So I would try to encourage guys to have that same curiosity about how things work can be brought to the family. Like, a lot of the reasons why I communicated the way I did with you guys is you piqued my curiosity anyway. Like, I'm looking at you, and it's like you'd be doing something and I would be fully like enraptured with, why are they thinking that way about this? Like, what, the hemisphere work allows me now, I get a better understanding of which proclivity now are we leaning to. Like, this looks like the left hemisphere is trying to solve this problem with a little more authority than the right hemisphere. So you're clearly not taking enough value in other people in the decision-making process that you're about to do, like in how this is about to play out. But I would always try to encourage guys to look at their families with that same sort of curiosity and love and desire to serve. Because most fellas could answer the question when I asked them on the rig, why are you here? What is your action? And if they didn't, or they kind of had it's for the money. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. So what is the money? Because money is just a tool, right? It's no different than a gun, right? You can do wonderful things with money. You can do terrible things with money. So that's fine. So if money is the motivator, is there something downstream then of this money once it's acquired or accrued or however you've come across it? Where would you like that money to take you and your wife, or take you and your family, or take your children? And sometimes it would be the standard sort of answer of, food on the table and pay for an education down the road and hockey gear and so forth. It's like, okay, so fair enough. So now you have a passion about what it is and why you're doing it, and this can be brought to the family. Like, you can literally tell, you just answered a question with me. You could communicate that desire with your wife when they want to know what you're thinking or what you're doing or why are you doing what you're doing. It's like that little ABC syllogistic line of thinking is a good starting point to be able to communicate with your wife. It's a great starting point to be able to communicate with kids about why you're doing the thing that you're doing. And along the way, have the humility to say, some of this I don't know. Like, I wouldn't, even if they didn't know, they were like, I don't know. I don't fully know. I just feel like this is where I need to be, which is a very right hemisphere answer to say, because they have an intrinsic value. They're just not exactly sure how to communicate it. Fair enough. Okay. So then that means, what is your action? Like, then now it's like, so then what are you physically doing? And what are you hoping then that it will accomplish? Because that's the weakness of the right hemisphere, is hope and potential. which is where its motivating factors are. So then I would try to bring that out and encourage that when I saw that even within the kids. So that way it helps you with one of the most important things of Socrates' overarching message, and it was part of Greek philosophy, was know thyself. And we have a version of that in our family, and it's know what you are so you can better negotiate who you are. Because who you are is the living thing. That is always the living thing. What you are, that doesn't change that much. As far as like, yes, there's physical change from getting younger to older, and all sorts of dynamics are going on there. But what you are is a human being, and what you have is a brain. God's greatest gift is that piece of meat between your ears. And so, I think that's something that's why I always encouraged guys to, and even my family, be curious, like have that student willingness, I mean, otherwise like the life experience, you'll find it too framed, I guess, if you will, like and there's nothing wrong with that for a time being, but Overton windows need to shift. Like, there's no, like what we say around the household, it's you can feel this way. You can let your left hemisphere have its say, but you can't stay there. Like, you can't stay there. You can be angry about something, but you can't stay there. You have to work your way through it, because you were never designed to stay angry. Your cortisol would kill you. You'll end up with like cancer or something,
Yeah.
My last thing for you, Megan, I was going to say be like Megan. The only reason I was going to say that is because, you're very inquisitive.
Yes.
But I was also going to say that be like Megan in the sense where even if you're not the one that has the curiosity to be the inquisitor, you have the curiosity to answer the question and like actually take the time to answer the question, because that's where you can get those lazy answers of like, or silence altogether, because someone like her approaches you and then you're like blank. Right? But that just shows something about you where it is that you're lacking, because you're not adopting that curiosity to even answer the question about your own existence, because you've chosen to own it. So Megan, your thoughts now on like literally all of us preambling.
Yeah. Oh man, so many thoughts actually. I love curiosity. I love asking questions, but underneath that is a value of continual learning. So that's why I kept asking questions on the drilling rig, and kept learning about everything. And that is in multiple capacities in my life. Same thing, you could talk about dirt biking. Love to dirt bike. How do I get better at it, right? And then seeking out a really good or the best mentor to be able to get you there as quickly as possible. But what I wanted to add to the conversation was when I was younger, one of the most instrumental books that I read was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you guys have read it.
I haven't read it yet.
I haven't read it yet.
So it's a concept of objectivism, which is rational self-interest. And it sounds like you all really understand. And this is something that when we talk about oil and gas, that we can understand that it is, for example, you mentioned this in your story, like, it is in my self-interest. If I want my mom's attention, I'm going to go help her do the chores around the house. And then ultimately I get quality time with my mom, right? Is what you're expressing and understanding. So people look at selfishness and think it's a terrible thing. Like, oh, how could you be selfish? Mm-hmm. But when you understand your values, this actually can be very good. Like, you guys are expressing that your family, and you're understanding the value of your family and keeping your family together, that's your self-interest. So when we look at oil and gas, when we look at, or a relationship or family, when they come home, it's actually probably in their highest and greatest good to really understand and serve their family, right? Like you mentioned, you'd like to serve your family, you like to serve your wife. And that's in the highest and greatest good of the family unit and for yourself as an oil and gas professional. The other thing that I really wanted to add in to the conversation is that, and you guys can tell me your thoughts on this, I think that everything starts with embodiment of emotions. So when we look at our emotions, and oftentimes when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, what do you feel about that? They start listing some logical, well, I think that I need to get groceries, and I think that I need to get my car fixed, and this is what I'm feeling. No, feelings are a physical sensation inside of our body, not logical thoughts. So we start with our feelings. Our feelings create our thoughts. Our thoughts then, formulate in our minds that creates what we see in this world, how we see the world. And that creates our action and ultimately our results. So everything in my mind starts with our emotions and getting really in touch and getting really clear with the way we're feeling. Like you said, I don't know, Mike, if you said anger earlier, or, you can't sit in anger. Those are our feelings.
Well,
If
you
we're
can't
sitting in
stay there.
anger,
Being angry, you got to give yourself permission to be angry, but you can't stay there, because anger has very little productivity, even for your own soul. Like, it only allows you to. There are moments where it's necessary, but believe me,
Yeah.
like, the older you get, you start to realize it's far and few. Those moments are very far and few. To make decisions and to conduct yourself in anger.
it's very low frequency emotion. Yes.
Well, it's also, the left hemisphere has access to it just like milliseconds faster than the right hemisphere, and also it's not the right hemisphere's wheelhouse to do that. There's like I said, there's reasons for anger, but I find it not the most productive. How about this? It wouldn't be if you would like to figure out how to demonstrate yourself with a higher quality of demonstration, then anger is not going to be the most ideal way to demonstrate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it plays into what you just said, though, frequency, right? Because it's like, even when you're talking about emotions, any of them can amplify the other. So it's like, if you get anger begets anger, right? Joy begets joy. Sadness begets sadness, because there's right hemispheres in our brains that, like, we empathize with each other. We mirror each other. We feel each other. So then when you're getting a little bit like all angry and all that, then for all you know, you're just activating the anger inside somebody else's left hemisphere that's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna play this game now, aren't we? And it's just it's an amplification process that can be good and bad, like consequences, right? It's like, it can be both. Like, there's consequences of you being if you're a kind person, someone might look at that, feel that, and go like, man, I wish that I was like that. I want to feel that, like, what it's like to either have kindness on me and also be kind. Like, I just want to know what that feels like. And so then when you said that, like, emotion kind of like goes into thought, I feel like it's like a bit of both at the same time.
Yeah.
Because when we do look at our hemisphere work and approaches, it's like, yeah, the hemispheres, they have their own kind of understandings of things and approaches to things, but sometimes it's not necessarily like you're conscious of it, right? It's like what we were alluding to earlier. Sometimes you're in something and you're letting life happen to you and at you, and then you're looking back in hindsight going like, whoa, I learned something really fundamental that I didn't think about when I was going into it. I just was doing the thing instinctively, maybe just stupidly because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but then afterwards, because we're human beings, we're also quite capable of looking at I guess glass half empty and full. You can look back and go like, oh shit, here's a good reason as to why I can build on that to get a better model for my existence.
Yeah, you bring up the question of kind of like human doing or human being. And when I first heard that, because I was and kind of still am that person where people are like, so, have you been? And I'm like, been busy. And then I list everything that I've been doing. And I met a life coach that said, that's an unsatisfactory answer. That's not how you are. And I feel like that does men injustice, because don't get me wrong, looking at, okay, if the guy gives you the list, or in my case, I gave you the list, it does present an opportunity to expand upon it. It's like, okay, so I got to get the groceries. It's like, isn't groceries tiring? I always want to take a nap after I take groceries. And then it's like, okay, so you can expand a bit more on how it makes you feel along there. But to discard the list of what men have to do, because we are creative beings. We create. We do stuff. And that's something, even we had an interview with another young lady, and there was that experiment with the mice, and these people gave the mice in the enclosure every basic survival need that on paper you need. Food, water, shelter, warmth. They had it all. These mice became vain. They stopped being sexually attracted to one another. Their morale and their frequency completely plummeted, even though they have everything they need. Well, they didn't need to do anything. They weren't creating anything. But that's the one thing that I think with the actions and human doing, I think is a part of human being. And so I don't think it's sufficient enough just to disregard if a man gives you a list. You can infer a lot from the list, and maybe they're not, so then your job is to then invite more, but that doesn't mean it's useless, because even the list can be, well, that's clearly where their mind is right now. Their value is on trying to do this list. What does this list say? They're trying, who does it serve? Who does the list serve? Is it serving the family? And it's like, oh, clearly he's feeling like some pressure to help the family and get these chores done, help get to the end of the day. And so even all those things about what they're doing, it does say a lot about their brain space. And Meghan, your point is to help people recognize what the list can tell about the person, which is very important. But the dichotomy of, thoughts versus feelings, I feel like it helps women really resonate with it, because women are very feely creatures, because we have more of a left-right ping, which means we're constantly going from empathy to the left hemisphere for logistics, empathy, logistics. And because it's more consistent left and right, we also have to be, our bodies go through more changes than the man does. And so we have to be more in tune with what's going on internally. Men don't exactly have that problem. So that's just a fundamental difference about the way that women have to be conscious of ourselves and our emotions versus men. I'm thinking of the Dax song, What It's Like to Be a Man. And it's funny because I love the 10-minute version. It's just this compilation of men talking about the feelings associated with being a man. And there's a lot of frustration, a lot of depression, but there's also just the dad. He's like, I got 11 kids. And he's like, and I was made to have kids. He's like, that is my purpose. And he's okay with giving the list. And then some men don't exactly know how to do this thing. They just have the anger and the feelings. And then I've heard other men listen to the song and they judge it, because they go, why does a man have to do that feely thing? I operate fine without it. It's like, there is sometimes that communication isn't necessarily for you. It is for the other person, and helping the other person understand your brain. Because if women operate fundamentally, mentally, and physically different than you, well, you got to build a bridge somehow. Otherwise, you'll just both be moving forward, and you'll have this gap that'll never get filled. But that gap will come to light. It never stays hidden. And so attempting to build that bridge, the sooner is usually the better. And so Meghan, you bringing the feeling versus thoughts dichotomy, that it really is a dichotomy that doesn't necessarily function, but just the looking at that way and understanding that sometimes the woman might be thinking that and the man might not be, bringing it to light to help build that bridge, that is important.
Mm-hmm. More often than not, too, the fellas not. Noelle and I attended a seminar many years ago, early in our marriage. And one of the stories that got brought up, and it's actually it's worth noting, and so it's good to bring up even in this conversation, because it'll also play into the feeling versus. So a husband and a wife walk into an ice cream parlor, and the man notices the cost of ice cream. The woman's looking at the ice cream that she would like to consume. She says, I'm going to have this particular sundae. He makes the comment of, wow, that's expensive, right? Just, right? That's a mathematical thought process that a man would do. She instantly goes, I'm not worth that. You know what I mean? Like inside of herself. And she starts getting upset that he doesn't want to buy her the ice cream because it's too expensive and she's not worth it. Not understanding that complexity did not even enter his mind.
Nope.
He was literally taking the context of inflation. The government's getting my damn money. That's how much. Of course, I'm going to buy it for you, baby. You know what I mean? But that didn't get communicated at all. So all of a sudden, she's upset when he's paying for it. He doesn't know why that just happened, and so he's caught in a realm of like, sorry, did I do something wrong? You know what I mean? And then she doesn't want to communicate it because mind reading is something men are supposed to be able to do, not realizing that our empathies are there, but our empathy is on average, it's something that manifests in relation to just like women's do, except women are co-ruminating with one another and men to generate that field, that magnetic field of betweenness. Men is in physical action, because we're designed and built for physical action. Like, I have shoulders and forearms because I can open the jars on average that, the ladies would like to have opened, or they want me to do the hunting and go and, bring home the bacon, so to speak. And a man has love and value in that service. Like, that's where, when the list would happen, if somebody asked me, like, how am I doing and how do I feel? I could definitely just go and spout off a list, but I can also explain to you, like, from my heart, why I'm willing to do the list. I desire to do the list. The people that are going to benefit from my list is a high motivational factor, because I love them and they mean something to me. And I don't even always know what that's going to, how will that manifest? I have served my whole, I'm 50 years old now. And I have been serving my family diligently, and also not diligently, because I've had my ups and my downs in the whole journey. I've had to reinvent myself several times. But to be able to communicate the why I'm doing the thing, and I believe that not all emotions are the origin story. I think that there's also lots that is the mystery, as Max Planck, right? You are a part of the mystery you're trying to solve, I believe. Macy's always getting...
No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. So the thing is that mystery has to be approached with fear and trembling and awe and wonder. And this is why emotions versus
Right.
rationalism, I don't fully agree with that in any way, shape, or form.
That's very smart, because
I see them as something that they manifest in and of one from
at the
and
same
with
time,
another.
no, that's very, very important, because it's the same dichotomy of mind versus body. People like to dichotomize feeling versus thoughts, mind versus body. As we used to talk about the right hemisphere, and people would say, that's the gut feeling, it's my heart. And it's like, not understanding cells are reciprocal. It isn't, oh, my brain tells my arm to do this thing,
Yeah,
and then my
exactly.
arm feels.
No, it's more like a river, and then you can't really. And if it's water, then there is no.
It's not
Every single cell is a part of the whole body.
Exactly.
The whole body of water.
That's why they
You
literally
can't
share
take
the
out the
same
individual
DNA.
cells of water. That's not how that works. They're all water.
No, exactly. So the thing about the gut feeling is that happens at the exact same time that the brain produces said hormones. It's like the body and the brain, they react at the exact same time. And so when people try and do this, I feel my heart, I don't talk, I ignore my brain. It's like, even women, that resonates with a lot of women, but it still doesn't do justice to the fact that your brain is doing this thing at
it's
the
still your brain.
exact same time as your heart. And that's, I think, again, why I really appreciate, Meghan, you bringing this and thinking about it, is because it is a very big gap, not just amongst men and women, but all human beings, but even especially men and women. It is one thing that they just don't get aligned, because people say men, they trust their heads more and women trust their hearts, not realizing you are using the same parts of both of your bodies at the exact same time.
Can you just trust your whole?
Exactly. And if you did that, you would understand the other person a lot better. So it's the same with the feelings versus the thoughts. What do you think about that, Meghan?
It's been really interesting for me. I spent so much time even downtown, predominantly working with men in the drilling industry, and then working on the rigs with men. It's actually been eye-opening for me to start working in groups of women. And I have to really even communicate things in a different way, I feel like, sometimes with them, because they internalize things in a different way, they communicate in a different way, they run a meeting in a different way, because men are so action oriented in oil and gas, right? And you get used to that, and you're okay with direct communication, and whereas oftentimes when I, for example, work with a group of women, that's just one example, I have to sugarcoat things a little bit more and add a few extra words in, so it's been a bit of a learning curve, but
and that plays into one of the questions that I have is, why is this, because this conversation has been, this is also largely what we talked about when we were talking with you at breakfast and you talking about your journey and your family. Why is this whole conversation something that you want to have? Why is it that you value this, and why do you want to bring it to other people? How has it helped you? Has it helped you, or where are you with this knowledge in your journey? Why is this currently your priority?
Mhm. I think you sort of answered that, but why am I here? Why do I feel so passionately about this? It's because it aligns with all my values. I love oil and gas. I love that experience. I value well-being. I value oil and gas. And I value adventure. So it aligns with everything that I've experienced. And so I feel passionate about bridging and making it easier on families as a whole, whether that's single people or maybe it's even like a roughneck looking for a family, right? How do we start to make the lifestyle a little bit easier and bridge all of these pieces together, right? But yeah, I mean, just like bringing awareness to it and helping men, the men in trades are at the highest risk of suicide, and I don't love that. I want to support them. I've lived the life with them. I've been right there with them. So, and I've also been the wife or the girlfriend on the flip side. I remember my boyfriend went to Montana Tech. He got his engineering degree and then went back out as a well site supervisor and drilling engineer. And I remember one time when he came home, because he was in engineering, he'd been working nights in northern Alberta for so long. Like, I think he did like 60 days in a row or something. He got home, he went and got his trailer. We were going to go camping. We were super excited for some time together. And literally on the way, while I was walking out to the trailer, he got a phone call from his boss that said, "We're taking a kick right now. You need to get back to site as soon as possible." And what was that like for him to be like, "Okay, just kidding. We're not going camping. We're not going to spend quality time together. I'm a starving engineer back in oil and gas, and I'm going back to the rig," right? So I've seen all sides of it, which I think gives me a unique perspective to be able to support families in this area and in this capacity. So
sometimes too, my encouragement for this, because I've literally seen those scenarios, and I've tried to train other people to be able to handle the problems that the company would try to just get me to solve. I'd be like, no. Because like when I walk off this rig, I'm with my family. Like when I'm with them, I'm with them. I will not be thinking about you. You will not be calling me to come and do a thing. And that confidence can be left behind when you have the other people that are on the iron trained and invested in. Like I had a scenario where I had the entire drill crew from the very bottom to the very top. They knew how to do full shut-ins for the responsibility that the driller had, regardless of whether I cared that the company wanted me to do it or not. I didn't care. I wanted the guys, every single one of them. So I made them all physically do it. They all went through the learning curve. I brought out the books. I explained everything so that they could respond and do the full second line well formation, get it under control, save the equipment, circulate it out, get it weighted up, everything. They knew how from start. So it didn't matter. Like I could get bonked on the head or fall down a flight of stairs, and the next dude, all the way down to the damn lease hand, knew how to fully shut in that well, and they understood the physics and the formulas as to why they were doing it. So one of the things that I would
leadership right there.
And I'd want to encourage the fella. It's like he's got to be able to know is just as important a word as yes. And a man has to be able to realize, like, no, as a company, you don't get to exploit me. Like, this is why your value belongs to you. No company decides your value. They're not purchasing your value. So I want to encourage anybody, if you're watching this and you're in the industry and you're a young guy, it's absolutely imperative that you learn right away that the value of who you are and what you're bringing to that drill floor or that operation, no matter what it is, from water hauler to the guy that's got to, go and calibrate the centrifuges, like it doesn't matter. You are not your company's dog. You bring value to that company. Have that willingness to be a learner and an earner, but also understand and have the self-respect to say no when you need to say no if you're keeping your finger on the pulse of your family and your relationships. I had no problems giving I would never take on extra projects because I was asked, and it was only consulting with the family. I would consult with the family. before I would take on the extra hitches. Because I got approached by guys all the time. Hey, you know, I need some extra time off. Because the minute you make the decision to take on a guy's week off, you're in for 5 or you're in for 9. You know what I'm saying? And so that can't just be a decision that I can just make because I held myself to the same standard when I told the family, don't make decisions that the family can't pay the price for. I would literally talk to Noelle. I'd be like, how's the family? Where are they at? Is this something like, even I'd be like, there's a part of me that I feel like I don't want to do this because I know what the cost is going to be, but is the family in a good place? Do we believe we could use the money? How would this help out with the kids? What's going on? Does anybody have a particular need? And so then they see the physical results of my decision and Noelle's decision has a direct continuity to them. And then they realize that they're making the sacrifice with me. So I'm not alone in this sacrifice. So I definitely want to encourage, because I'm very passionate about that. That was a story that
I just want to add to that,
triggers.
if I can. I don't know if you're trying to wrap things up, but I just want, it brings one other thing to mind. I just think that is true leadership. So early in my career, when it was announced that I wanted to be a well site supervisor, you better believe that was not well received by the men that I worked with, like knives in the back. And I literally got told that you will sit down and shut up at your desk. I'm not teaching you, and nobody will be teaching you.
Yeah, there's lots of gatekeepers.
What kind of leadership do you think that is? Yeah, not that I haven't done that myself, but what kind of leadership is that, right? So, you know, I was lucky enough that I quit that job. I went with a crew that understood that the stronger that I was, the stronger that our team was. So when the well site supervisor knew that I could also answer any other question from anyone in the command center coming to ask questions, all of a sudden he had a lot less stress, right? Like he knew that the stronger the roughneck was and the better that the drilling crew knew well control or any topic under drilling, right? The stronger the team was, the safer that they were. And that is true leadership, right? Because there's no...
Oh, well, there's a good line for it, is that you're trying to demonstrate yourself with a willingness to plant the trees whom shade you will not sit asunder. You have to look at the future of your team as something very, very important, and it's not just you. It's almost like you want to be replaced. Like, honestly,
exactly.
You know, and
you're not afraid to be replaced.
Yeah, not at all, because my value isn't based on my position. My value is what I bring to the operation. That's what they
it's
need
like
too.
there's no pride in the fact that now you're the only one that knows this, because then what you'll get is someone that's getting resentful because they feel alone, that they're the only one that knows it. But in the sense, if you're not teaching anybody else, that's kind of on you, dude. Like, you're crying in a corner, but you could be solving the problem and teaching somebody else younger or older who's willing, who's got the time, and then you're like, okay, that's like a load off of me. So because that way, like, if someone's going to be trying to get something out of me, I can just go like, no, I got guys in position that know exactly what to do, because I don't pride myself on being the only one that knows. Like, I'm not the king of the hill. They're like, it's not even a fucking hill. Like, everybody, it's a flat fucking surface if we all do our jobs right.
Then you're not canceling camping trips.
One of the, I think the most important pieces of information and perspective that we had as a team is that as a well site supervisor, I was actually of service to every other person on the drilling rig. I'm not the top. I'm actually the bottom. I'm responsible to give you every single thing that you need in order to do your job safely and well. So I'm here to serve you, just like you were saying earlier about your family, right? Like, I'm here to serve my wife. I'm here to help my family, whatever that looks like.
Well, in our conversation over breakfast, this is one thing that you're alluding to, is that this is all the makings of good leadership. And me and Macy and our family being involved in politics, we hear that all the time, like how to make a good leader and what would make a good politician. Oftentimes politicians do not make the best leaders, but one thing that you do working with these men and your passion to bring these skills to men, these skills are this leadership mentality, because funny enough, you're leading your own value and you're leading your own life. And the funny thing about some of the best leaders, as we're hearing from Dad and what you're describing, the best leaders don't think of themselves as leaders. They think themselves as a part of a team. And so they don't see themselves as this isolated entity. They're like paying attention to the fact that, gosh, there's so many moving parts, and I need to make sure that if one wheel goes down, that the whole operation doesn't go down. You know, there's safety nets, and then there's the backups, and there's the resistance thresholds and all of that stuff, with room for error. And all of this exercises and this mode of attention, these things of ways of thinking, will help build that ability to help other people become the thing that you yourself may want to be or find yourself you are. And so that's another thing that you have kind of brought full circle, which is this is also something that needs to happen in training. You know, when you're training the next generation, if you're on the crew, this is stuff that can happen before you get on. It can happen on the crew if, you know, need be, if they didn't get if it's trial by fire. But this is also stuff that just industries don't necessarily consider, which is when they consider leadership, it's always, especially in politics, it's this isolated context of what a leader is. They see the leader as this isolated entity on top. They're never isolated. That's what the point of a leader is because there's a whole array of foundations and people and pillars of which they are upon. It is definitely not them isolated. One of the things that I remember Dad talked about, there was this exercise where Dad told all of the men to fold a piece of paper in half. That was the instruction, fold a piece of paper in half. Well, one guy went horizontally, another guy went vertically, and then one guy did a triangle. There's so many different ways in order to do the exact same thing. And so understanding that disposition about people, that is not only just the team you're working with, it's also the team inside of your own head and your body. All of that will provide better accountability to how to respond and be in better relation to people. And that's everybody. My brother likes to joke, be the main character in your own story. But what you're describing, that rational selfishism, what is that? Rational
self-interest, yeah.
Self-interest, thank you. That is always in relation to some sort of family, work family, home family. It is rational self-interest in relation to other people because we're not isolated. And my brother said, be the main character in your own story, in the sense of what you said at the very beginning, Megan. Your top value is embodying your experience, and to act as if you're the main character in your own story is to lead your own life as if you have a say, as if you can change your mind, as if you can change your circumstances. And then that's also the willingness to allow when life comes at you, but it's to act as if you are the leader of a team. And those around you, like you, Megan, as if your job is to serve the rest and do a damn good job at it, whatever it is, and do it as best as you can. And that is what my brother says, which is being the main character in your own story. So that
we are the main characters in our own story, right? We have the ability to choose. What do I want to do with my life, and how do I want to be while I'm doing it? Do you want to work on the oil rigs or not? And either answer is fine. It's okay if you don't want to anymore, if you want to be an entrepreneur, right? And how do I want to be while I'm there? Do I want to be angry and pissed off that I'm away from my family, or do I want to be engaged and learning? You know, like, we get to choose these things. Because you mentioned this earlier too, because we are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole individuals. And so we're capable of making these decisions for ourselves, but they are conscious decisions, right?
Yes, absolutely. Is there any final questions for Megan? Or Megan, do you have any final thoughts before I show people where they can find you and inquire more about your work and then how to delve into this?
I just, thank you so much for having me on and for having this discussion. I love talking about oil and gas. I love sharing stories, and I really appreciate the openness and the ability to have the conversation with everyone. So all my passions colliding all in one.
We'll just have to put a little disclaimer that it's not really as much of an interview of you as it was also an interview of us. But,
well, it's actually also a good sales about what her next goal is. If you want to say something about that, because this is what, if I'm not mistaken, you want to do going forth, is bringing out these kind of conversations. Do you want to elaborate?
Speaking of action, what's yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of my goals is to figure out how to support the oil and gas industry in mental health and well-being, and how we can bridge these worlds for everyone, for families as well, the exact conversation that we're having. There may be also possibilities of working with things like suicide. And we didn't talk about end of life today, but I am also an end of life doula, something that I feel passionate about supporting endings in all capacities, right? Like it doesn't matter if we're talking about childhood going to university, end of a relationship, end of a marriage, end of a career, end of an identity, end of life itself. So I feel really passionate about all those things. Um, so yeah, looking, and I have some opportunities to work and support oil and gas, and I'm working right now, potentially working with a scholarship for oil and gas for mental health, which will be really interesting to be able to support, and we'll continue from there.
Alrighty. Well, people can find your work. Definitely. The thing is, she's on Substack, and then she's got 6 beautiful links here. Her website's in the making, where I'm sure all of these courses and these opportunities will be elaborated on. People can follow Meghan on Facebook, Instagram, or contact her if you yourself have insights that you would like to talk to her about, because I know she wants to do more actual conversations like this one. My dad was kind of the guinea pig today about what she would also like to do with other people. So whether you're a wife or if you are the tradesperson yourself, you can reach out to Meghan to have this conversation and to figure out how to work in some of this mindset into whether it's the end of her career, end of life, or all of this jazz. She's on YouTube, X, so you can find all of those links, Instagram, on her Substack, and
And if you don't have Substack, go to either Instagram, Facebook, X, find her, and then I'm sure your links are probably somewhere in your bio.
Yeah. My website is mindfulof.ca, so we can find everything from there as well.
Well, I definitely wish you the best for the endeavor, because I too have a soft spot in my heart for all those that are on those cold checker graded drill floors. And
I know.
and the thing is that I believe that it's full of honorable individuals, even if they don't all fully know how to communicate. I do understand, like that was one of the things that kind of was, you're not duck, like that. I got that a lot from a lot of different people because of the communication style that I brought out into the rigs. But that was one of the things that I was first approached about. It was a friend, and he was like, this is something that's important, that needs to be in the patch. He's like, the ability for guys to communicate at that next level, but not just like for each other, but so that it will manifest to their families, and it will have its place even when you're dealing with your superiors, because I was also a pretty ballsy roughneck about how I would handle talking to the guys that were up the chain, because I would respect their positions, but you also have to respect yourself, and that you need their knowledge, so when those gatekeeping guys would come along, and there was like hundreds of those guys, it's just them looking for a false security. It's just false security status. That's why they don't want to. I understand that every master should save a trick or two under his belt, so to speak. But normally that's for those scenarios that don't show up that often, right? So you don't need to fill all your guys' heads with all those particular details, But that being said, I've never believed in gatekeeping. I don't think it's a wise way of living your life, and so. Yeah, if there's people out there that can get any value from this conversation or the work that you're trying to do, I do encourage it, because first off, it's energy, and there's a direct correlation to the success of human beings and energy used. So the higher the density of the energy, the better and more that we use it, human beings will prosper. So people need to still be out on those drill floors.
Yeah. And if we understand our underlying philosophies and values, then we can navigate any of life's transitions. It doesn't matter what it is.
Well, it's an honor.
Yes, thank
you
so
very much
much
for having me.
All right, everybody. This has been another episode of At Home with Holmes. Woohoo!
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Till next time.